TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donation. Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening, and welcome to our daily TV7 Israel News Bulletin, broadcast from Jerusalem. U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace was announced over the weekend, and to Israel's surprise, Turkey and Qatar were invited by Washington, despite Jerusalem's objections. Damascus gained significant ground in northeastern Syria that after a Turkish-backed offensive results in a collapse of SDF defenses. Reports indicate the Ayatollah regime has murdered over 16,500 Iranians. U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace was announced over the weekend, and to Israel's surprise, Turkey and Qatar were invited by Washington, despite Jerusalem's objections. The Prime Minister's office responded to the revelation on Saturday, stressing that the announced composition of the Gaza Executive Committee, which is subordinate to the peace conference, was not coordinated with Israel and is contrary to its policy. As a result, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu instructed Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar to contact his American counterpart, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and to convey Israel's opposition. Moreover, tensions within Netanyahu's governing coalition are seemingly on the rise, with Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich calling on the Prime Minister to dismantle the headquarters of the U.S.-led Civil Military Coordination Center, or CMCC, in Kiryat Gat, to expel the United Kingdom and Egypt, which are perceived as undermining Israel's national security, from any involvement in the future of Gaza, and to reinvigorate a vigorous ultimatum to the Islamist Hamas terror organization to disarm and depart the Gaza Strip.
The time has come to dismantle the headquarters in Kiryat Gat, to remove from their countries like Egypt and Britain, which are hostile to Israel and undermine its security, to present Hamas with a very short ultimatum for real disarmament and expulsion, and immediately upon its expiration, to storm the Gaza Strip with full force, to destroy Hamas militarily, civilly and administratively, to open the Rafah crossing with or without Egyptian consent, and to allow Gaza's residents to leave and seek their future elsewhere, where they will not endanger the future of our children.
Senior American sources have told TV7 that President Trump is not impressed by Israel's objections, as he intends to utilize Turkey and Qatar to pressure Hamas to succumb to objections vis-a-vis his 20 points plan. Among others, in the course of the World Economic Forum in Davos later this week, a particularly rare condemnation of Hamas will be issued for its delay in handing over its weapons, as the terrorist group had initially promised. The condemnation will be led by President Trump himself and will be joined by dozens of world leaders, to include representatives of Turkey and Qatar as well. Meanwhile, following the conclusion of the Davos Forum, all of the countries responsible for running the Gaza Strip, to include Turkey and Qatar, will present Hamas with a categorical demand to disarm. The demand will be presented by the Board of Peace headed by President Donald Trump, the executive committee that runs Gaza, and the Palestinian government of technocrats. A well-informed official revealed that if Hamas continues to reject the demands to disarm, President Donald Trump will allow Israel to deal with the problem militarily, as he had committed to in his last meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. However, if Hamas does agree, the full implementation will have to be closely monitored, since Israeli and American officials have taken into account the possibility that Hamas's cooperation might be only partial and that only some of its weapons will be handed over. It remains unclear what will be done if that is the case. Meanwhile, dozens of world leaders have been invited to take an active role in the Board of Peace, from India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi all the way to Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney. Meanwhile, in London, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer highlighted the UK had indicated its own willingness to play its part and that the terms of President Trump's Board of Peace were currently being discussed.
On the question of the Board of Peace, look, we're supportive of the measures that are being taken across the Middle East, particularly the ceasefire. I do think we need to press on to phase 2. We've indicated our willingness to play our part, and we will. And on the Board of Peace, we're talking to allies about the terms of the Board of Peace.
Turning to Israel's northern neighbor, Syria, where forces loyal to the Damascus regime of Ahmad al-Shara, to include Bedouin forces and Turkish-backed militias, have launched a decisive offensive against the predominantly Kurdish-led SDF militias, which under the U.S. leadership of Operation Inherent Resolve served in the past as the most potent ground forces to combat the Islamic State. And yet, when Damascus launched an attack against the SDF, a lack of support from all state actors, to include the United States, has resulted in the collapse of the Kurdish front lines, forcing it to accept a ceasefire, which in effect may well be construed as terms of surrender.
I recommend a complete ceasefire at this time. And I also urge our Arab tribes there to remain calm and peaceful, and to allow for the gradual implementation of the agreement's provisions until we achieve complete peace in Syria. Syrian institutions will enter all of Syria's territory in the region, but there are some sensitivities in certain areas. Security personnel will be drawn from these areas to prevent any fighting.
Despite the announced ceasefire, clashes reportedly persist on multiple fronts, with Damascus-led forces gaining additional ground. And while SDF is clearly with its back against a wall, the most potent section of the US-backed organization, to include specifically the Kurdish YPG militia, has called on Israel to expand its support from the Druze and Christians in southern Syria to the Kurds in northeastern Syria as well, clearly indicating that repeated allegations by Turkish officials over Israeli support for the SDF in northeast Syria were blatantly false.
Of course, we consider Israel a powerful state in the region with its own agenda. We hope that the stance taken by the countries of the region towards any of the Syrian minorities will be the same, including the Kurds.
It is important to stress that while Damascus and the SDF have reached a ceasefire arrangement, the situation on the ground remains highly volatile, with prospects of violations highly likely. Turning now to Iran, where the Ayatollah regime continues to crack down on nationwide protests, with separate reports indicating thousands of civilians murdered, in addition to hundreds of thousands sustaining separate degrees of injuries. According to one report which was published by the British Sunday Times, as many as 16,500 Iranians have been killed by the regime, while 330,000 others have been wounded. This information was based on data extracted from medical facilities, including some 8 major hospitals across Iran. Nevertheless, the regime continues to block the internet across the country, making it near impossible to corroborate published information. With that being said, pro-regime Iranians who are departing Iran through the border with Iraq have provided some insight into the situation on the ground and the narrative which the Ayatollah regime is disseminating by its propaganda tools.
Those who organized the demonstrations were instigated by the US and Israel. Allah willing, the Iranian Popular Mobilization Forces, the Revolutionary Guard, and the Basij will destroy them. Every week we prepare food in the mosque for the forces protecting us in the streets. Thank Allah, a few days ago we gathered and went out, and you saw our numbers. Allah willing, and with the strength of Ahlul Bayt and the Master of the Age and Time, this country will be victorious, and this country will not fall.
بالليل عندنا شوي اختشاشات تصير
At night, there are some protests that take place with few people that were organizing them, and they had support from foreign countries. Because of this, our intelligence services shut down the internet to prevent anyone from communicating with other countries regarding the demonstrations. Safety is great there, but it's scary at night. Until the afternoon it is safe. After that, the Iranian Popular Mobilization Forces and intelligence services at sunset tells people to close the shops, but from the morning till the afternoon, it's safe.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to also thank you if you are a supporter of TV7 Israel, which is exclusively donation-based. Your monthly donations are essential in helping us produce our daily programs from here in Jerusalem. If you have yet to support TV7 Israel and are a regular viewer, I would like to encourage you to become a monthly supporter. You can donate via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I would like to encourage you to keep the Iranian people as well as the Syrian minorities in prayer and to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel in the face of rising tensions and hostilities across the region. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Tov, and God willing, until our next broadcast, Shalom from Jerusalem.